Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the shop. It's kind of late here, but I'm going to try to crank out one more saw repair tonight. We've had quite a few saws come in the last couple days. Let's see what we've got here. There's a Stihl 028 here for service. Probably get to that one in the morning. There's a 291 here for a bogging issue. A 211 not running well. An 038 AV, an 038 Magnum, an 038 Super. I think those three are here for tune-up services. I'll have to look at the tags. 462. I think this is here for just a bar or oiling issue. 291. Can't remember why that's here. There's just a Stihl combi power head here for service. This might be simple. Let's see if we can deal with this 462 tonight. Hey there, welcome back to my workbench. Today we have this Stihl MS462 saw. Customer dropped it off and said that when he's cutting with it, the bar gets so hot that he can't touch it. So we're going to find out why this is happening. So just a quick look here. The chain, this is a fairly new bar and chain. The chain is very sharp on the right side, but the point is dull on the left side. I'll bring the camera in closer here in a second and show you what I mean. I'm going to zoom in here on some of the cutters on this chain to show you a sharp cutter and a dull cutter to show you what I was describing. If I put my fingers in here, it'll focus better. So this cutter, this is on the right side of the bar. That's my cutter. That's my raker. That's my raker right there. So this is a fairly new chain, so lots of meat left here. That little line, that's where this cutter can be sharpened back to. So you can see the point, that point right there. That's what you want to see on a sharp chain. This saw wants to have a sharp chain and be under load when it's cutting. When that point hits something and has dulled, it won't cut well, and you're overworking the chainsaw. So that's a good example of what a sharp cutter looks like. Now I'm going to show you what a dull one looks like. Let me just move this along, and then I'll bring it into focus. So this is the left side of the chain, and you can see this point here isn't a point. It's dulled off. It's hit something. It could just be a pebble. It could be something in the wood. Whatever it was enough to dull the point of this cutter, and it did this the whole way around the chain. So the left side is worse than the right side, but this isn't the whole problem here, but this would be contributing to this problem. Later on, at some point, I'll do a video just on chain sharpening, and we'll focus in on cutters, rakers, how to sharpen, different ways to sharpen, but that'll be a video on its own. Before I go out and test this in wood, this whole chain will be sharpened left and right. The right needs sharpening too. I know the whole thing needs sharpening, but I just wanted to show you an example of what that point should look like and what that point shouldn't look like. So we will sharpen this whole thing, and we will cut with this saw in a bit. I'm going to show you the best way I know how to describe a sharp chain versus a dull chain. So here's the wood I'm going to cut. Here's my chain. I'm the chainsaw. This knife has a dull side and a sharp side. So if I'm cutting my wood with a dull chain, I'm not getting much done here. I'm making all kinds of dust. I'm working hard. My saw is working hard. I'm not getting anywhere. My saw is over revving. My saw is overheating. Now, if I sharpen, if I cut with a sharp chain, you see that? I'm actually cutting. My saw is biting in. My saw is not working near as hard. My saw is not overheating. A sharp chain and a dull chain. I see lots of saw failure that begins with a dull chain. A dull chain creates little bits of dust instead of shavings. Your air filter gets packed with fine dust, and things just go wrong from there. Okay, so now that we've covered the sharpness of the chain, another issue I see here is the tension of this chain. So a chain can be too loose, and a chain can be tensioned too tight. This chain I should be able to easily turn this when I have the brake off. I can turn it, but the chain, it's too tight. This is going to be very hard on the bar sprocket. It's going to be very hard in the clutch bearing, the crankshaft, and it would definitely explain why this bar is getting hot. So the chain is tensioned too tight, we know that. I can see bar oil, so I don't think we have an oiling issue here, but I'm going to remove the bar and chain. I'm going to verify that the saw is oiling, and we'll see what else we can find here. Okay, let's take the bar and chain off this. These 462s have captive bar nuts, so the bar nuts stay with the cover. Okay, so with the bar and chain off, I'm going to take it outside and run it and just verify that it's oiling. Follow me. Hopefully this starts better than the MS250. So let's take the chain off the bar and inspect the bar, the tip, and the oiler holes. Okay, so we'll just inspect this bar. The oiler hole is clean and clear. The bar rails, so these are your bar rails. Just looking for burring. There's no burring. Little bit of dirt and dust in the rails, but that's normal. We'll clean all that out before we put this back on. The sprocket tip, no binding. It moves freely. I don't see any problem with this bar. So just a quick look at the chain here. Other than being dull, I see no issue with it. I don't think he ran it very long like this, just long enough to maybe hit something. All right, let's go to the sharpener and get this thing sharpened up. Okay, so my chain is razor sharp, ready to reinstall. I'm gonna clean my bar rails out. I've got this little bar rail cleaning tool here. So you always pull away from the sprocket. You don't want to pull dirt up into that. There's not too much in there, but we'll get it out anyways. Pretty clean. Sometimes you clean these out and it's unbelievable the stuff that's packed in there. So if you don't clean this out and you get a big buildup in your rails here, that'll cause your chain to rise up and sit too high, and it'll cause sideways movement in your chain, and it can also interfere with your oiling because your oil is riding down these channels. Okay, my oiler holes here, I have one on each side. I'm just gonna make sure that they're clean and clear. So there's a factory here in Canada, in Guelph, Ontario, that makes these bars. I've been to it, and a machine drills this oiler hole, and it's drilled on an angle, and they told us how many, the machine goes through tons of drill bits because it's so hard drilling on the angle. Anyways, just an interesting little tidbit. So I'm just going to give the bar a bit of a wipe down, and then we'll put this back together. So these bars, if you get a burr, these are very sharp. So if you want to be very careful cleaning or wiping these down, because you could really hurt yourself. Let's put the bar and chain back on this saw. I've got you pulled in here close to me, so hopefully I can get a close-up of what I'm doing here. So the bar, yes, it looks like it's upside down. It's a good practice every time you sharpen your chain to flip the bar, just for even wear. So first thing I'm going to do, mount my bar on the pin. And then I'm going to grab my chain here. Make sure I'm not putting it on backwards. Yeah, it happens all the time. I see saws come in, they won't cut. Chains are on backwards. They won't cut well with the chain on incorrectly. I'm going to put the chain on my rim sprocket into my bar slot. Can be a little bit fiddly putting the chain on, but I've got it on the bar. And then before I go any further, see right here, while I was doing that, it slipped off the sprocket. I see often where this chain gets installed in front of the rim sprocket or behind it. You want to make sure it's on. Right now it's not on. So we'll just give it a test run here. So my chain is on my rim sprocket. You can see that. So before you go tightening anything down, just verify this. And then I'll bring my clutch cover. My bar nuts are captive here, so they just stay with it. That's handy. And I'll just tighten these on just by hand. Now I'll tension the chain. Oh, you see my chain coming up here. I'm going to pull up on the bar as I'm tensioning this. just until the chain makes contact. And then I'll tighten these down. So that's a good tension. You don't want it hanging. You want it sitting up in the rail. I'm able to pull it out, see the drive teeth, but it snaps right back in. I can easily move it. There we go. Okay, so we verified that our saw is oiling. We've removed the bar and chain. We've inspected the bar. We've sharpened our chain. It's all back together. Let's go outside and do some test cuts and make sure this thing is working properly. I'll see you out there. Okay, we're back with this 462. It's the next day. Yesterday got a little hectic here. I ended up getting pulled out front and I couldn't finish what I was doing on this. So the last thing you seen me do was go out with it and make 3 cuts. So I made the 3 cuts. When I was finished, the bar was hot, the chain was dry. It still wasn't oiling properly. You've seen it oiling with the bar and chain off, but it wasn't oiling enough to lubricate the bar and chain. I made sure that my oil pump was adjusted to the highest setting, because you have a setting. You can turn the oil down, turn the oil up. So it's set to the highest setting. I started to wonder if maybe, like I showed you earlier, that the bar has a little hole drilled in it for oil from the factory. I wondered, is there a chance that that hole isn't drilled correctly? I've never seen that before in an Oregon bar, but you never know. So I checked, and the bar isn't the problem. At that point, my husband took over with this. I had to go do other things. The fellow who owns the saw is in a rush for it. He has to have it back. He can't wait. So we had to continue with it off of film. So my husband went ahead and did a oil system inspection. First of all, checked the lines, and there's a filter in there. Sawdust does get in there. Every time this cap gets open, you know, if a little bit of sawdust or dirt falls in there, I have seen those lines get plugged up, and that could be the problem, but that wasn't the problem here. He checked the oil pump drive and gears, and everything there is fine as well. So if you've watched some of my previous chainsaw videos, you've seen me test the fuel tank vent, and you've seen I've described how as fuel comes out of the tank, air has to replace it. So the oil tank works the exact same way. As bar oil comes out, air has to replace it. So this is what the tank vent on this chainsaw looks like. It's like a little check valve, and as bar oil leaves the tank, air enters in the hole into the tank. So I won't show you on this saw because I've got it back together, but I've got a 500i sitting right here, which is the same idea. So let me get my pointer here. Right there, that's your oil tank vent. So he went ahead and removed the oil pump off the saw, and he hooked up the tester to the oil line that comes from the tank to test for vacuum. And the tank vent should not hold any vacuum. So he was pumping, and the vacuum was dropping as it should, but something still wasn't right. So when he was testing with this, if you would just pump it, the vacuum would just release no problem. But then he slowed this down and he put like 0.1 of a bar, just a slight amount of vacuum, and it would hold it. And then if you kept going further, then it would release it. So maybe something going wrong inside the tank vent. So he went ahead and removed the tank vent. This is the one that came out of the saw, just into a piece of fuel line with a fitting. And this is a brand new tank vent set up the same way. So if I suck through this, the air just comes through. There's no problem. There's no resistance. There's no vacuum. The old tank vent that came out of it, listen. There's resistance, there's vacuum until a certain point, and then it goes. So this tester works well for many applications, and usually tank vents as well. Usually when a tank vent fails, it's very obvious on this gauge. As we've seen in my 038 video, the tank vent on that saw was failed, the fuel tank vent, and this gauge picked it up without a problem. This is not a scientific test I did here, but nothing beats the vacuum test of your mouth. It's like drinking through a straw. If there was a blockage in your straw, you would know it. And the difference between sucking water through a straw or sucking a milkshake through a straw, it's the best way I know how to explain it. So according to the service manual for this chainsaw, this gauge should have picked the problem up, but it didn't. It took doing something silly like this to find it. So we'll probably give Stihl a call next week and just ask them if they've ever seen this before. You know, maybe there's a known issue that we've never seen. Maybe someone watching here has seen this issue. If you have, let us know in the comments. So just to be clear, this tank vent is working, but it holds a small amount of vacuum, and it shouldn't hold any. And I don't think the oil pump is strong enough to overcome the vacuum. I'm zoomed in here on the new oil vent and the old one. This is the one that came off the 462. It looks to me like there's a stamping defect. You can see a difference between them. These have a little ball and a spring in them. And my theory is that there is too much pressure on the spring inside of this one. Something's just different about it. You see that there? It's just not the same. It's almost like it was stamped too hard, or there was something wrong with the machinery that was making it at the time. It'd be neat if we could take this apart and try to see what happened inside of it, but I would destroy this taking it apart. So this is the best I can do, is just zoom in here and show you the stamping difference on it. So here's a bit of a lower side view of these two. The old one here. So what they've done is put a spring and a ball in here, and then that's a little washer in there, and then they crimp it down. That little washer is pushed down further than that washer. That spring has too much pressure on it. This was a factory defect. So closing statement here on this chainsaw. When the customer dropped this off, he said the barn chain are getting really hot. And I actually received the saw that day. And I said, maybe it's not oiling. And he said, no, there's lots of oil. I keep adding oil to the reservoir. It's using oil. It's a bar problem or it's a rim sprocket problem is what he said. So as we've learned from this saw, A saw can be oiling, but not be oiling properly. Tank vents can be a very tricky thing to diagnose. So yesterday, after Tyler replaced the tank vent, he put the barn chain back on, went outside and cut with it for quite a while, and verified that the saw is making lots of oil. The chain and bar are well lubricated, and the saw is ready to go home. So the case is closed on the MS462. We got lots of saws to work on, so let's get on to the next one. Thanks for watching.